Hi, everyone. Welcome to our very first podcast. We are super excited. I'm Stephanie. This is Natalie.
Hi.
We're from Immersive Spirit, and welcome to our podcast is called High Heels to Happy Feels. And it's all about our adventures in corporate living as we have been um, basically the last 30 odd years living and working in the corporate community and in corporate jobs, and really branching out and opening our own business on the spiritual side, which we have always loved. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But Natalie, why don't you introduce yourself first?
So I'm Natalie with Immersive Spirit. Like Stephanie mentioned, both her and I work in the corporate world. And recently we have decided to start our own business with Immersive Spirit since we were called after 30 years to finally take action and move forward in this world. So great to meet everybody.
Yeah,
Stick around.
yes. And I'm Stephanie. So we're sisters, if that's not completely obvious just from listening to us talk and how we're going to banter. But if it doesn't make sense, it will as you continue to watch our podcast. I was drawn to the spiritual world when I was 5. My grandfather came to visit me, as I would learn much later. It's a longer story that I'll delve into at another time. But ultimately, that led me to just kind of open my eyes to everything around me. And then as we evolved later into life, later teens, college, that type of thing, we found other spiritual paths and different different things that really called to both of us, right? That were really earth-based. So Wicca, the Native American traditions, Buddhism, all over those are things that we've studied over the last, what now, 30, 35 years, 40 years.
Careful.
I know. We started when we were 5, just so everybody's aware. Um, yeah. And now that, we kind of make the joke about the broom closet, even though it's not the witchcraft or Wicca side that we're practicing. We call ourselves spiritual eclectics because we love a little bit of everything and take a little bit of everything we've learned from all the stuff we've done over the last 30 something years and use it all because everything's got wisdom in it. I don't know. Nat, anything you want to add?
Um, no, not really. Well, kind of my path to it was Steph and I have kind of always seen spirits. So I've always lived in haunted houses, not realizing that maybe not everybody else experienced things the way I did. So most recently working on our mediumship and psychic abilities. So it's been an adventure and we've learned a lot over these years.
Definitely. Definitely.
Sure. So what are
Uh,
we talking about today? First,
well,
first
the
part.
first, yeah, and the first thing we're going to talk about is how the digital media has impacted us, or how, I don't even want to say it that way, but in thinking about what we've done for a living the last, and we work in software. So I'll just tell everybody that part of it. We do work in software industry, and we still do. So we'll caveat it with that too, right? Some things just are needed to pay the bills, and the company we work for, we're both lucky enough to work for, treats us very, very well.
We love our jobs.
We do. We love our jobs. Our hearts don't soar with our current job, right? And with this, mm, helping other people, spiritual development, being on our path, I mean, that just makes our heart soar. So the goal is, of course, this is our retirement plan, and we'll transition to this as we're able, but um, we've seen a lot of development, right, within the digital world. And not just software, but the use of technology for media. Think about the things that even developed as we were during COVID. How many people really work remote now, and how many people are embracing Zoom, embracing Google Hangouts, doing more of conversations like this. COVID had people via families all of a sudden, we had game night on Zoom. So, yeah. So I think the first thing we really want to talk about is how how has that impacted the spiritual world, right? So for me, it's like thinking about questions because people can look a lot of things up. Google's out there, right? AI, which we won't get into the AI part of it so much today, but it's really a bigger conversation around digital. But how has all of that impacted your spiritual development? So I think the first thing, as we're talking about this, and I don't know, is Nat, anything you want to add to that before we just jump in?
No, no. We've had a lot of growth over the last 30 years when we used to do everything by book and have to go to all the bookstores and do all of that. And now from the comfort of our own homes, we can learn so much and get involved in communities and be a part of that. So I
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that brings me to my first question, really. So, in thinking about this, I just kind of jotted down some questions for us that I think would be really common questions and things that were asked from our friends, right? So, our friends talk to us a lot. Number one, they all want our jobs, the day jobs. They love, how do you work remote? How do you get this? How do you do this and get paid for it and all that? And we're like, well, why we love you, you know, it's not everybody's path. And we're grateful for it, but again, it's not what makes our heart happy either. So we're looking at other people. Well, how do you do that? So it's the same thing. It's how do you get there? In this case, Natalie brought up a really good point about the accessibility. So I'll start with that. How do you think because you've mentioned, being able to look up everything online. What would you say have been the biggest impacts for you or the biggest ways that digital media has impacted other communities in being able to make spiritual development more accessible?
and that's such a good question. For me personally, like when we started out, I think a lot of spirituality has grown over time, over the time we've even been involved in it. And when we first started and we were really digging into Wicca and learning all of those different things, while we had to go to the bookstore, we also had to do it pretty solo because there wasn't so much inclusion as there is today based in spirituality. So it's been easier for me to find community and find people who have very open minds and can see things in a different way and kind of match with my energy. So finding community has been a really, really important one to me. Plus, all of the online resources like we talked about, being able to look things up online or being able to even access library or do audio downloads. Like the world has completely changed from when we first, made
Gosh.
our little secret books.
Right? Right. And we had, you had to find a metaphysical store. Good luck. So number one, you got to go find the store. Then you got to go buy the books and you've got this much money and this much time. And how much time do you have to read this whole paperback? And now it's just a plethora of information at your fingertips, right? You can Google, but you can also hit Amazon or your favorite Barnes, whatever digital resource you're using, Goodreads, Barnes and Noble, whatever, and download your book and go through and find your content and save it all in this digital library. You don't need shelves and shelves and shelves, and you've got all this referenceable data right in front of you. And the community part, oh my gosh, we are involved in so many different communities. The astrology community I'm in. I love the community we're building on Immersive Spirit. We have some of the most amazing people on our community already. Even though it's a small group, we've just got a lovely group of people on our community and other places that we're involved. Um, yeah, I think that's been huge.
Community, you make a great point because we've done hundreds of readings
No,
between, I've done hundreds of readings. I know you've done hundreds of readings as well. And our reach has been exponential because of the ability to be able to do it online. Like I've read for folks in South Africa, I've read for Australia, I've read for UK. It's a matter of time zone, and we still have to be um, respectful of each other's time.
yeah,
But to be able to do readings for people that are halfway across the world, all the way across the world, really is what I want to say.
yeah.
Have that community with them and be a part of their community and someone that they think about.
And you're developing friendships. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
the coolest thing in the whole world to just be here and you're reading and you're sharing a part of somebody's life that is in the UK or that is in Australia or New Zealand. Or, I mean, look at the podcast we did not long ago, Nat, remember? And that he was in New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
our latest.
This is so much fun that we're sitting here, and the other people we've appeared on their podcast as guests. We've been on East Coast podcast. I know the next one we're scheduled for. I think that one's in East Coast, but the one on Sunday I think is UK. I believe I'll have to look again. But how sweet is it, right? That we can just be on, we can guest appear on podcasts, we can do readings, we do coaching. All of our coaching is done that way. Unless you're really local, but where I live is a very small community in the northwestern um, part of Montana, so it's not like there's a whole lot of people here that we're connecting and going out and there are folks, but I've got local people, but there's not a huge community here like there is in an online presence.
Right. And that's a great point, as you are pretty rural for being able to connect to all of these different people. So like
Yeah.
it's just really changed everything. But that leads me to another question.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think the authenticity of being in a digital age has changed things for you? Like I know you're a Reiki master teacher. I believe, yeah, you have RMTs.
Yep.
Uh, how has that changed things for you, where you had a Reiki practice where you could physically touch or see somebody to now being able to again be global with it?
Yeah. And it's been fascinating. I I gotta say, for me personally, and maybe it's really because you and I get it, in terms of the digital part, right? We've been doing it so dang long that it's just, when Zoom rolled out, first it was what, webinars, and there was before webinars, what was that other one? There was meetups, not meetups,
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah. There was but it wasn't the meetup like the event group. It was like meetups, the web thing. And there was, anyway, all these other platforms pre-Zoom, and Zoom came along and mastered it and really did a great job. So we get that part, right? And I'm rambling a little bit, but it's because that's what we do. And you'll get used to it with me and Natalie. I ramble and she gets me back on course. I have loved how the healing has been transformational for people via Zoom. It is almost cooler to do it this way. And for me, I'll tell you why. It's because when you're physically with somebody, they can feel a presence about where you are. So in their mind, they're telling themselves, "Oh, she's on my net." Even though we're telling them to get out of their head and they're doing this. And I'm not saying I don't love doing physical Reiki as well, because I do, because there's something very special and personal about that connecting. But when you're on a Zoom or or however, whatever platform we need to use for our guest, um, they don't know. We're sitting in it. And the whole point is for them to be at peace as I'm working through the different chakras and figuring out exactly where things are off. And then at the end, I won't tell them, I'll ask them, where did you feel this? And where did you feel that? And and let them know where I was at different points. And it is rewarding and fascinating and inspiring that it is so helpful to so many people that
Mhm. Yep.
you're digital and then they're telling you, oh my gosh, I totally felt you by my neck. And I'll say, I was right, at the base of I was on your shoulders, or I was right here, and here's what we were doing. And then I'll say, and then I moved here, and what did you feel? So we're trading back and forth, right? I'm not like just waiting for them and then I'm just giving them the answer they want to hear. I mean, we're going back and forth and confirming where we're at. I love it. I really do.
Yeah, that's amazing. So do you think that that has enhanced or hindered connections? Like, I don't know, do you have people who talk about their spiritual growth, or do they follow up and feedback and does it feel like it's the same for the folks that you used to work with personally now, working with others over Zoom?
It does. Um, Again, it's a different experience, but it's like it's like us going in for that, and you lay on a table and you get into a certain position and you do all these things. This is almost easier for people on the other end, especially those that maybe aren't as comfortable with the spiritual that path yet. And maybe because they're in the comfort of their own space. And there's something to be said about the music that they want in the background, or no music, or the incense they want, or none, or, their favorite chair, their favorite position, whatever that is for them, could be sitting on their back porch, could be laying in the grass. It's whatever really works best for them to get that comfortable place. And that is a gift. That's a gift because I can't just drive to Ohio to do Reiki and or to Washington and certainly not gonna swim to London. So this has been magical. I love it. I love it. I think it's really enhanced things. I really do. I don't know that all Reiki practitioners would tell you that. I think, there's a lot, especially older school, who would say, there's a personal thing to it. And yes, laying stones and being able to do that and set those crystals. But the fact is, I still have the stones and I can still set intention and I can still do those things from right here in my space and and go through that with the person sitting with me.
So I think you bring up a good point because there's a difference between sharing energy and sharing space with people. And you don't necessarily, because like when I'm working on mediumship or when I'm working psychically with somebody online, like I like incense. I use my reader beads. I have things specifically that help me
Right. Your
stay
own tools, right?
right.
It's things that we gel with, or it's a crystal, or it's a whatever it is, but it's your space. It's what makes you feel good.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
And that allows them to be comfortable in what they expect. So that's
absolutely.
really,
Yes,
really good. It personalizes it a lot.
I agree. I agree. I think it's been um hugely beneficial. And I think, what's really cool too, Nat, is I think about this and you think about like the teaching and the offerings we have coming up. And, stay tuned, folks. We have such a list going of things that we want to do. It's just hours in the day and getting it all done. Our next one, I will just say really quick, we have a free course out there on setting your intentions for every new moon, right? It's just a lunar intention. It guides you through it. We've got a little video, which we know we need to redo. It's a little dry, but just go with it, right? It's free for heaven's sake. And there's a template out there. And so you can use that template over and over again every month and set down those goals, set down and work through it. And then we've got our offerings and things that we're developing. But all of these things we're doing remotely. I mean, you and I get together and we Zoom. We don't live next to each other. We've
No.
built our I mean, we get together 4 or 5 times a year. We do as much as we can, and we spend weeks at a time together. But we have built Immersive Spirit. If we're being really honest, we have built it digitally because of being remote. We've been in Zoom calls. We are sharing Google Docs and going through and editing and doing going through and doing different proofings of each other's course and content. We're recording those with different mediums and at different times, or even like this with our podcast. Hello, we're on Zoom and then we'll upload it. So, yeah, it's amazing. But I guess I'll follow up with how do you think it's hindered connections? How do you think all of it has hindered our connections? And I think you asked me that a little bit about the Reiki, but I mean, how else do you think it's hindered those besides a personal connection, right? Because I agree with that. There's something to be said about me going for coffee with my spiritual woo-woo girls around here and hanging out and freaking out everybody in a Starbucks as we talk about, astral projection or dead people and spirits and mediumship and all of those good things. It's kind of fun, but what do you think?
So, and the thing is like I wasn't really doing like readings or mediumship for folks up until we had all of this digital capabilities. So I have a hard time understanding like how it would be hindered because energy just is a flow and things come so naturally that I haven't experienced a hindrance. I do, however, I'm super empathetic. Um, I hate to label myself an empath, but I tend to
You
feel
are.
people's emotions fairly
You
significantly. And I hate that sometimes I can't grab somebody's hand and just hold it and hold space and be in their space with them while they need me to be. But I do send them energy anyway. So, I haven't been hindered by it too much. However, how do you think it affects our personal growth?
hmm. I think kind of the same ways, right?
Yeah.
Um, because we're not together. And the thing is, though, and if we're being really honest, we get a hell of a lot more done when we're on a Zoom working, remotely than we do when we're together. Because when we're together, we're like, ooh, but what about this? And ooh, what about this? And oh, hey, I mean, squirrel. Oh my God, we squirrel so bad. And next thing you know, we're involved in a whole new course going, oh, look at this one. And we're taking somebody else's, learning something new, which is great. We never stop learning. Never, never, never stop learning. I mean, that's one of the things that you and I are just totally agree on. We're constantly enrolled and involved in something. Um, but I think some of it has hindered us in terms of how fast we would be doing retreats, how fast we would be getting courses live in front of a broader audience, um, versus just, having to record it and try and go through some of those pieces. So I think there's that. And I do agree with you, like what you were saying too, about being able to hold somebody's hand, right? When you're doing a reading, for example, and Natalie's a giant empath. I mean, my God, woman, we can't go to the bar for very long. And she's like, whereas I'm whatever and bubble up or whatever. I mean, apparently I don't have near that talent. But my sister is an incredible empath. And
Careful calling it a talent, man.
I know. One of those things that she's got, because everybody's got it. It's all in what we've developed and what we do with it, right? We know that, especially like intuition. And I was headed somewhere with this. And there you go, squirrel.
Squirrel. Sorry about
Oh, no, that's my fault because I rambled too long. I totally squirreled that one. I think it was all around though, the the readings, right? Yours was having those empath moments. That's what it was. Now I'm there. Squirrel. Turning the or is that a hamster turning wheels? Anyway, am I gonna lose it again? No. So doing readings for people, you cry. I mean, something hits, right? Somebody comes through, whether it's an ancestor or whether there's something from a spirit guide that they're hearing from me. Because us, we're just the conduits, we're a tool, and so we're just here to relay those messages. But some of them are pretty powerful. And when the person on the other side is receiving that and they're crying, and all you can do, like you said, is hold space, which is amazing. And it's amazing that we can all do that for each other, that we can hold that space and just share our energy and share love. But you really just want to hug them.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't feel like it's enough.
Yeah, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, let's just take a pause, get a tissue. What do we need to do? Yeah. Okay, because because you can't, right? That's Yeah, and that's again back to your other question about where is the hindrance in the development. It's those moments. It's the micro moments, right? The smaller, um, and those are human moments. If we're
Right.
really, it's the human moments, and we're sitting here talking about the digital part of all of this. It's that human piece and that human element that we are unable to, we can't do anything about over a screen. I
Right.
can smile. I can love on you. I can send you this energy. I can do those things, but that's as far as I can take it. And same with you, right? Same with anybody who's doing this and doing it in a digital level.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And I think the great thing about digital, kind of a good and a bad, is our personal and development and our growth.
Hmm.
I think the expectations are so high on ourselves now because, think back when, we were in university and you're sitting in the library and you're soaking all the stuff in and you're taking all the notes and you're making your captions and like, what does that really mean? And you take that back and you think about that for maybe a couple of days. Well, now you're expected to find that online within an hour, understand the concept. Like the expectation has
Right.
exponentially grown for people.
Right.
So that's really, it's hard. I'm really hard on myself for not like getting new modalities down right away. Like psychic development and mediumship, those things kind of come to your path.
Right. And they've been there for a very long time for us. So that one is,
Right.
they're
So that one's a little
always
different
can be improved, right? They can always be
for
developed.
sure. And you're always working on them. But when
Yeah.
you're like trying to learn Reiki or just, I mean,
Yeah.
we understand how to share energy, but how do you share energy without symbols? you are expected to get like things just down, and it's a
Mm,
different world that way. And I think that's kind of a downfall for development because we used to be developed at a slower pace. But
true,
now we grow into things that were unexpected too
true.
with fast pace.
I agree. Because you look at like the kids, right? Today, and it used to be you had a couple of giant books, and even like you said at university, when you go to get your semester worth of books, you had a stack like this. Now they've got a stack of a couple of giant ones and a laptop, and they better have downloaded all 400 pieces of whatever it is that they're going to have to. And part of me wonders, though, is did we lose something there? Because you are memorize, 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 spit it out, forget. And then,
Right.
how much are you really retaining if you like the benefit of, I think, the spiritual path and this part of it is we are sharing it with others at the same time. So, yeah, you might learn at a rapid pace because of the media and how it's presented, but then it seems like everyone has communities as well. So you can join communities and have conversation and ask these people more questions. So as we deepen our knowledge of astrology, because that's a big one for me and you. So as we're delving more and more into that beyond, the transits and houses and zodiacs and so on, but really getting into the deeper meaning and deeper pieces of astrology. Yeah, I'm not going to memorize that in a day. I'm not going to memorize that in a month. I'm not going to memorize that in a year. I need people to bounce ideas off with, and I can't. I am I'm a physical learner. I need to do it by doing it, and I need that visualization. Just reading it someplace does not make it stick for me.
Gets you through a test, but that's kind of like the difference in
Yeah,
our world now. We used to take slow development steps, and now it's from here to here, off the cliff and start again.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I think that's a little sad. I like our approach. I mean, and some do really well at that, right? They keep that knowledge, they remember it, and good for them. Um, Mine, unless I've got something to apply it to right away, I'm not the same way. I really need to live in that space, absorb it, practice it, play with it, mull it around. Yeah, I can absorb it really quick and pass a test on it, no problem. Do I know what it means? No, I don't know shit. I don't know anything about it. Don't ask me again because I'm gonna go, whatever. I have no clue what you're freaking talking about. Hmm. I can spell it.
Happens at work all the time. You problem solve, you're like, great, problem solved.
Right.
Someone comes
Okay.
like, "Well, okay, so how did you solve this problem?" You're like, what problem?
Yeah. We had a problem?
No.
No, we didn't because it's solved. There's no more problem. So we're moving on.
On forgot squirrel is out of the house.
Oh my God, that's so true. Well, and I think, the other part of it, I think of like even our mentors and stuff along the way. And the most recent that we're working with, and hopefully, she'll be able to appear on a future podcast with us. But all the courses we've worked through with her and all the development we've done, all of those things have been um, Zoom. Except for the retreat where we taught, but we do a lot of Zoom. We do a lot of, and it's a lot of her content, of course, is online. So it's
Mhm.
all the same thing. It's been developed that way. We just had the opportunity to do something a little different with our path there and experience it at a deeper level, which I think was the benefit because we do have that personal touch to it, which again, that's kind of my key and my driver when there's somebody pushing from behind.
Right. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of difference because I had a mentor that lives near me that I worked with for a little bit,
Yeah.
and there hasn't been a lot of difference in, I mean, there's difference in content, of course, except for a few things that seem to cross all spiritual boundaries. Um, but the uptake of the data and the information has not been much different.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, you connect with somebody or you don't, right?
Right.
That's kind of where I'm at. And maybe again, that's to our benefit of back to our whole thing around, why we called it high heels to happy feels, because we are going from this corporate kind of existence into our happy place. Um, but because of what we know from that digital space and what we've worked in for so very long, it makes it easier for us to communicate that way. Zoom doesn't bother us, and it's horrible for some people. Some people have a really hard time transitioning to using digital media, and not just to build content or to go out and create, take a selfie or do a what are they, Snapchats or FaceTime somebody or whatever it is you're going to do, but to really get in and comfortable using Zoom all the time, or to have these conversations, or to create and go in and be involved in and doing lessons like that, do coaching like that, do development, because that's what we do. We're
Well, even posting
mentoring.
on community, when
Yeah,
you find community and you're able to go out there and have conversations with people that are all over the world and
yeah,
you're on those topics and you get to be involved in what you're interested in because of it.
exactly. And I think that's a huge enhancement for people, because for people that not just remote locations, but people that are introverted about it, or they live in an area where maybe it's not acceptable, or even in a environment and personal environment where it's not acceptable.
Mhm.
They have a place of acceptance available all the time, because everyone is welcome, right? The one thing about spiritual is it's very, very inclusive. And we have that ability to be able to join other people from whatever. I mean, there's no race barriers, there's no religion barriers, there's no economic barriers. The biggest economic barriers, if you can get to the website, right? And a lot of those apps are free. And even people with very little income have a phone. Because a phone, whether it's your landline at home or whether it's your very fancy newest iPhone or Samsung or whatever it might be, yeah, everybody's got one. So
Yeah, and I think like when nobody had phones, accessibility just gets easier and easier. And technology is, it just changes the way we think. And I know that more is coming in that same vein.
I agree. I agree. I did it's funny because we're talking about this, and I had a friend ask me, and I'm sorry, I get the fidgets when we do these videos sometimes. So you'll get used to me, people. You'll just deal with it. She's used to me. I'm a fidget. My aunt was, I can't remember if it was my aunt or my mom. I was asking Natalie this when we started, and she's like, I don't remember ever hearing that. So now I'm going to have to call my mother and ask her. But they'd be like, quit being such a fidget stick. Did anybody ever else hear fidget stick as a term? I mean, somebody else had to have heard fidget stick. So if
I'm your
else
sister and
on
I grew up with
comments, right? Somebody else had to have heard this. So if nothing else that you get from this podcast, would you please put a comment in at the end about, somewhere in there, if you've heard about fidget sticks? Fidget stick. That's what it is. All right. So I digress. But again, squirrels in our head. This friend had asked me, and it was, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, well, that's a good one to save as we're going to talk about this digital conversation, right? And where we're at. But how is the technical, the digital influenced or impacted the spiritual development side versus traditional, versus going to a circle, versus going and reading your book, versus things where you had to go and be live? And I mean, I kind of gave my thoughts on it at the time, but wonder what you think.
So I think that's a great question. And I think that's going to be very individual answers. So as we grew through technology, it's been great for us because we got to practice and do things and explore in areas where we didn't have to um, necessarily try to find our tribe in our community.
Mhm.
So that gave us an opening to have that, exploration and really figure out where we wanted to be and who we wanted to be with. And now I find myself kind of finding community around me as well. And technology has actually made that easier because I can go out to meetups or I can go out to Facebook or I can all of these different platforms where I can say who's local who wants to meet up on these topics. And it's become a thing. And now I'm able to find groups and technology made that possible.
Yes, I agree. And that was my response too, right? Because I told this person in this example, I'm like, look, I as we know, just where I live and just kind of some of the remoteness here in the valley, it's hard to find the other like-minded individuals, and meetups was one source.
Mhm.
And that meetup, I actually was taken to that meetup by somebody who I met on another group that we're on, another community. And she doesn't go much like community very much, but we both found out that we lived, 15, 20 miles from each other. And all of a sudden, there's 10, 11 new people in my life spiritually that would have never been there. And we had a festival up here where, Immersive Spirit was a vendor. And it was all because of these connections. That had not happened locally or live because we don't have the stores. We don't have it's not like a big city where you have all these holistic fairs and all these different things going on all the time. And even if you have those, you still aren't going to make a connection with somebody who's next door necessarily because it's a big community. There's a lot of people spread out or they come from out of state for those. So, yeah, that's been huge for me. I absolutely agree. And it got me into the meetup of something else, like you'd mentioned. So we have a whole law of attraction group, and who knows what's to come from it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Technology has brought us closer to our community,
It
both
is wild.
locally and online. So it's
Yeah,
good.
it really has. It really, and if you think about it, so thinking about it for people like in a social media sense, how many people really would be connected with those old colleagues from high school if it weren't for Facebook or, what used to be MySpace before that, or, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all the little tools you have out there. Would you know what your neighbors, what your friends were up to? Your relatives, would you care? Would you be reaching out? Would you check in? No. You'd have five handful of friends that you might have stayed in touch with over this time, not 150 or 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever it is that you have on your social platforms that you're all involved with. So,
Yep, exactly.
yep.
Exactly.
Or apps like Nextdoor, which all of a sudden which is awesome for people in communities because they can go out and post about lost cats, lost dogs, or found cats, found dogs, selling this, selling that. I'm asking for an exterior painter and got a whole bunch of referrals from that. Yeah, it's amazing. Did we have before it was like go over and maybe ask your neighbor Joe, or if you're at your local watering hole or at a restaurant, or you try to ask friends and you get referrals. This way, you have a whole group of friends that all live around you and they all know who's the best one for that job. That
Yep.
is the power of digital.
So true. And I think that's probably a good place to end it.
I agree. But this has been super fun. And, folks, bear with us. First podcast. So we would, number one, love to have your comments and feedback as long as you're not saying, I'm a fidget stick. Just, I know that. But you could tell me your own story about fidget stick. Um,
I think you should tell her that anyway, because it'd be kind of funny. Oh, we're gonna have to find music for our podcast and
we
inbound
do. We
and
do. We have stuff ahead of us, but we just wanted to get topics going because we've got so much on our list we want to talk about. And we love to ramble on. So it's just maybe that we could use that. Led Zeppelin's Ramble On. Oh,
I think you need permission for that.
yeah, probably. All right. Well, with that, it's Stephanie
And Natalie,
with Immersive Spirit. Please check us out at immersivespirit.com. You're going to see all of our links below. Um, we would love to have you follow us, subscribe to our channel, uh, join us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you go for your social. And please stay tuned for our next podcast. We hope to be getting these in a weekly cadence. So stay tuned. Thank you.